Now it really is my great pleasure to welcome our keynote speaker today, Ken O'Donnell. And I think as many of you know, the Brahma Kumaris started about 80 years ago in Sindh in Pakistan. But international activities began a little over 40 years ago. And the international headquarters is in London. And Brother Ken, was one of the first students to emerge around 1975. He was only 22 years old at that time. And he is originally from Australia. He studied meditation in London, returned to Australia, opened some meditation centers in Australia, and then he was invited to go to Brazil. And since then he's been based in South America and is the Brahma Kumaris area coordinator for that continent. And Ken, I would say, is really quite an extraordinary person, because whatever he turns his mind to, he's able to do at the highest quality. He's really an extremely gifted teacher and communicator, as you'll see in just a few moments. But he's an accomplished writer. He's written 16 books in 3 languages, English, Portuguese, and Spanish. And he's also an accomplished musician. And he hasn't got his guitar with him today, but I think in his heart he would love to play you a song as well. And a management consultant. And in Brazil, he's worked to the highest levels of government with the Prime Minister and even the President of Mexico and people at that level. So Ken, whatever he puts his mind to, he has an extraordinary ability to fully focus and develop it to the highest quality. But deep in his heart is his relationship with God. And I think he would be the first one to tell you that it's his relationship with God which has motivated him to his extraordinary life, where he's traveled the whole planet teaching and meeting countless thousands of people and sharing the ancient Raj Yoga of this great country. So please give a big, big warm welcome to Brother Ken.
Good morning, everyone. Om Shanti. Thank you for your very kind words, Charlie. We've been on this journey together from the beginning. In fact, the first class I went to, he was starting to come to the classes on that very day. So we've known each other even before that, actually. So lovely to be here. Greetings to my fellow members on the stage and to my brothers and sisters in the audience. As Sister Asha was saying, I'd like to go into the depths of things, and really not from an intellectual perspective, because we're probably tired of just listening to words. What we need to do is to sort of go into ourselves. And I started on this journey, it must have been about 16. I was fascinated by a book called The Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. And I wanted to do something like that, it was very inspiring. And another book by Swami Vivekananda called Raj Yoga. And that really called attention, because he was saying what we need to do is to master not only the external nature, but master our inner nature. And I must say I really tried to teach myself that, but I got as far as I could go, actually. I did a similar journey to Charlie, like going across from Australia to Europe, through Asia and Europe. But just before coming to Brahma Kumaris, I spent almost 6 months in silence and alone on the coast of Morocco. And I had with me, I wanted to do this experiment, a little bit inspired by Mahatma Gandhi also. His autobiography, in which he talks about using his life as a laboratory. I said, okay, I want to do something like that. So I reduced all of my possessions to the absolute minimum. I just had one set of clothes, actually. I couldn't get rid of my guitar, but somehow there's a little bit of attachment, a little bit like the story of the sage who was attached to his staff. But I had with me a copy of the Bhagavad Gita, some of the Upanishads, the Dhammapada from Buddhism, the Quran and the New Testament of the Bible. So my day would be, fasting and meditating, basically. And fasting and meditating. And I must say that I become more confused. Because I could see on one side, all of these problems that we're talking about, they've just become much worse. But even in those days, things were not so great. There was lots of wars and lots of confusion. And I wanted to really master my inner nature, as Swami Vivekananda was saying. And he used that example of the mind being like a monkey. And not just a monkey that was sort of, it was drunk with the wine. It was not just a monkey jumping around in our head, but it was a monkey that was drunk on the wine of desire and stung by the scorpion of jealousy. And not only that, possessed by the demon of pride. So I can imagine something that's possessed, poisoned and drunk. And that's how our minds are. Just a little bit before the World Cup of soccer in Brazil, I was with a group of executives from the airport authority. And I asked them, just out of curiosity, what was the busiest airport there. And they told me that was the São Paulo domestic airport. It has a flight every 90 seconds or something. And I just say, okay, what about the airport of the mind, how many flights come in and take off? And I just said, okay, let's say you've got 24 hours, 1,000 waking minutes of the 1,440 minutes, and you have a flight every 2 seconds, say. How many flights? 30,000. If you have something happening in your mind every second, there's 60,000. Every half second, it's 120,000 things going on here. And I think you would agree with me that the reason for our chronic tiredness, if we're tired, some people just sit down, they fall asleep, because it's that brain is being overworked, basically. Now, no matter what we do with our body, we still have to, as Vivekananda said, we have to look at our inner nature as well. So I was always fascinated by Raj Yoga, and I tried to practice it without any teacher. Not a good idea. So when I got back to London in those days, I asked them where they were going so early in the morning. They said, we're going to Raj Yoga Center. I said, oh, okay, great. I thought it was, the classic Raj Yoga, but I came to understand that it was much deeper. And it was actually the ancient Raj Yoga that probably existed even before Patanjali came along. A very, very spiritual approach to things, as Asha Didi was talking about the yam and the yam. I can understand that it's very, very important, and from an experiential point of view, absolutely essential to have a foundation of self-discipline. The same, actually, that we practice were outlined in the Ashtanga Yoga. And then I understood it's not really a question of just controlling your breath. It's controlling your thinking. And the controlling of the thinking has a much greater effect on our life force than just controlling our breath. And there are so many studies that show the effects of our thinking on and feeling, emotions on the state of the health. And not only that, I could understand that it's not a question of postures either, just physical postures. It's really much more important to have the mental postures sorted out. I have to be courageous like a lion and not just put my body into that posture. I have to be detached like a lotus flower, not just put my body sitting with my feet on top of my knees. So it's really about how we set ourselves internally. And then if we're set okay internally, then we can really start to experience. But the mind is such a tricky thing. Let's do a short experience. I want you to think who here likes mangoes? Who likes mangoes? Okay. I think it's a universal favorite. So I want you to think about a mango. Just think about it. Put a mango in your mind. And you can almost taste it, right? Try to remember the taste, the texture, the juiciness. Can you do it? Okay. What about thinking about the sun? Okay, try to think about the sun. Can you put the sun in your mind? Can you feel the warmth, the heat, the light? So, these two little simple exercise. Okay, what happens if you think about someone's defects? What happens? How do you feel? How do you feel? Not so great, huh? So, whatever comes into our mind, the mind has such a quality that sort of not only absorbs what's passing through it, but it feels it as well. So the mind's like a field where things happen. There's a game happening, yeah? Sometimes the game is, very, very, very violent in a way. And sometimes the game is very flowing. So when there's a violent game happening in the mind doesn't feel so great. It suffers. But the problem is not the mind, it's the game, right? So what I've understood, and I have experienced different types of meditation. One type of meditation looks at taking the players off the field. So nothing's happening there. And while the players are off the field, you feel great. It's actually very, very relaxing. But as soon as you come back to normal activities, those players come back on, right? They did not change just by being taken off the field. Another type of meditation substitutes the players by, images or sounds or chants. And again, you feel great. You feel relaxed. There are numerous benefits just by observing your thinking and slowing it down and putting something else there. But in the long run, it's probably better to help to train the players that are playing the game in your mind to play better, to play more harmoniously, so that naturally you're having a good experience no matter what's going on. This last one is actually what Raj Yoga does. It helps you to train whatever's happening in your mind to play the game in such a way that it has an effect of diminishing the quantity of our thinking and improving the quality of it. So from 100,000 bits and pieces jostling around in our minds, you come down to 50, 30, 20, 5. Imagine getting through the day with just 1,000 thoughts. 1,000, even less maybe. Getting into the essential things. And this has helped tremendously, even in the work that I've done for some big corporations and governments. You know, there's a lot of chaos happening. The world is in a phase, what they're calling permanent uncertainty. Permanent uncertainty. People don't know what's going to happen next. But if you're able to, you know, keep your mind clear of all of the excess through some sort of a deeper practice, and I'll describe in a minute or so exactly how that practice is, you'll have enormous benefits in being able to see the essence of a complicated situation. You'll be able to feel what people are really wanting and needing. You'll be able to see more, and if you can see more, you can decide better. If you see much less, you know, and most of us look at the world through a very narrow spectrum of our ego, you know, I am so and so, I did this and that, you know. We get caught up in a lot of nonsense, I would say, sometimes pretty senseless things. And this is very important because the spiritual, and therefore the control of our thinking because of a spiritual stage, is actually a container in which our mental and emotional lives happen. And the mental and emotional lives is a container in which our physical reality exists. So if I want to change the physical reality, my personal life's reality, I have to look at how I feel and think, right? If I want to change how I feel and think, I have to redefine myself spiritually, because that's the big container. That's the big one. And that's really the holistic idea. Because if I'm not okay spiritually, that will affect my thinking and feeling. And if I'm not okay thought and emotion-wise, then I'm going to have problems in my physical reality. You know, the relationships, the things that form around me, the sort of work I get. In fact, how do I change karma if I don't change the seed of it, which is not just the thinking, but the consciousness, the smriti, right? So in meditation, what happens is, with that foundation that I mentioned before of the principles and the internal postures and the right thinking, you have that sort of connection during the day, then it's very easy to detach, you know, the pratyahara that Asha mentioned, to withdraw from the senses and their objects, to withdraw from our roles and all of the complications that are involved in our roles, and even withdraw from our own story, you know, that I was born here and this happened and that happened, now I'm meditating, even to go beyond that ego. So what am I if nothing else existed? If I don't have a role, if I don't have a body, if I don't have any objects, if I don't have any story, I still exist, right? And how am I? Who am I? So we see ourselves as a spiritual being going through this human experience rather than a human being looking for a spiritual one. So I'm this spiritual being. I also exist before this life. I will exist after it. So at the moment I'm here giving life to this form. It's not the mouth that's speaking, it's the soul. That spiritual energy has another connection in another dimension. It's not the physical dimension, it's a subtle one. So in that subtle dimension there's a connection with, you know, First of all, our other brother souls. And secondly, and most importantly, a connection with the Supreme, Paramatma. And that's the connection that's been broken. Therefore, the necessity to reconnect. There's probably a deep connection between the word yoga, which means connection, and the word religion, which comes from the meaning of reconnection. In Latin, religare, means to reconnect. To reconnect the soul and God, right? So that reconnection, or the connection, is actually what yoga is. But to do that, I have to detach. And to be able to detach, I have to have some sort of a preparation. That's why niyam, the thinking is actually controlling the prana. And the postures, the asanas of the soul, right? The postures of the mind. They help me very much to be able to detach. But what do I do when I detach? Mentally, I bring onto the screen of my mind God, like a light source, not like 1,000 suns, like it says in the Gita, right, or the Mahabharata, but very subtle and soft, radiating love, radiating peace, radiating truth. And I bring that onto the screen of my mind. As I saw him there, just receiving that power. So that what happens, the thoughts become less and less and less. I become more and more focused. So there'll be the second stage, the dhyan. And then finally I go into a state of deep concentration where there's just one thought and one feeling, one connection, like the dharana, right? And then the last stage, I become who I really am. I become the soul, the pure soul, the peaceful soul, the contented soul, the powerful soul, the truthful soul. I become that. And as I become that, I'm not thinking anymore. I am that. So these are like the steps of meditation. And it's not very difficult. It just requires the preparation, requires some sort of a setup. You can't have 23 hours and a half of useless thinking and hope that the 1/2 an hour that you set aside for your meditation is going to be useful. Won't be just the same. So we use our practical life to sort out our attitudes, to sort out our thinking, to live in what we call a soul-conscious way as we interact with people and objects. But we preserve ourselves. I am me. I am the soul. Everyone has their own parts to play. I have to concentrate on my one. So I feed those sort of thoughts as I'm interacting with the world. And when I sit down to meditate, I'm already halfway there. And it's a great pleasure to just fly beyond all of the confusion and be merciful and benevolent towards everyone and everything. And what that does, it brings out the best in us. I guess we are, as it was said yesterday, we are givers, If my giving has stopped, I'm actually sitting on myself. The true self comes to life when it gives. So if I move into a state where I'm not criticizing anymore, I'm actually blessing, I feel blessed and I feel like being benevolent towards everyone. And cultivate that sort of attitude so that when you meditate, those steps of moving away and focusing your love on the source, on God, the Father, the Mother, the friend, actually having a loveful exchange, like a heart-to-heart conversation with that one, then you start to focus on one idea, one feeling, one thought, and you become that. And so you certainly move away from 100,000 bits of stuff floating around our minds every day. So we're going to have some experience later on today, but just keep that in mind. I'm the soul. I'm giving life to the body that I'm sitting in. I came into this body. Later on I'm going to leave it. I leave it. The body doesn't leave me. I leave it. I'm the soul.